In the name of God, in this session I want to give you more explanation about lexicography. Lexicography is divided into two separate but equally important groups. Practical lexicography is the art of craft of compiling, writing and editing dictionaries. Maybe some of this matter are shared with the previous session, but I want to repeat them for better understanding of this matter. I want to review them again. Theoretical lexicography. I remember that in one of the sessions I referred to the practical lexicography and theoretical lexicography, but I want to give you more information about these two types of lexicography. Theoretical lexicography is the scholarly discipline of the analyzing and describing the semantic, syntagmatic, and pragmatic relationship within the lexicon or vocabulary of a language, developing series of dictionary components and structures, linking the data in dictionaries, the needs for information by users in specific types of situations, and how users may best access the data incorporated in printed and electronic dictionaries. This is sometimes referred to as meta-lexicography. I don't want to repeat this line again because I know that I said something about these two types of lexicography in the previous session. There is some disagreement on the definition of lexicology as distinct from lexicography. Some use lexicology as a synonym for theoretical lexicography, and others use it to mean a branch of linguistics pertaining to the inventory of words in a particular language. And a person devoted to lexicography is called lexicographer. But what is the focus of lexicography? General lexicography focuses on the design, compilation, use and evaluation of general dictionaries, like dictionaries that provide a description of the language in general use. Such a dictionary is usually called a general dictionary or LGP dictionary, language for general purpose. I know that we read about general lexicography and specialized lexicography too. But specialized lexicography focuses on the design, compilation, use and evaluation of specialized dictionaries, like dictionaries that are devoted to a relatively restricted set of linguistic and factual elements of one or more specialist subject fields, like legal lexicography, for example. Such a dictionary is usually called a specialized dictionary or language for specific purposes dictionary. And following Nielsen in 1984, specialized dictionaries are either multi-field, single-field, or subfield dictionaries. Therefore, specialized dictionaries, which have the specific purpose, are in the form of multiple field, single field or subfield dictionaries. It is now widely accepted that lexicography is a scholarly discipline in its own right and not a sub-branch of applied linguistics, as the chief object of the study in lexicography is the dictionary. But what are the aspects of lexicography? Practical lexicographic work involves several activities, and the compilation of well-crafted dictionaries requires careful consideration of all or some of the following aspects. Profiling the intended users, like linguistic and non-linguistic competences, and identifying their needs. Defining the communicative and cognitive function of the dictionary. Selecting and organizing the component of the dictionary. choosing the appropriate structures for presenting the data in the dictionary, like frame structure, distribution structure, macro structure, microstructure, and cross-reference structure. Selecting words and affixes for systematization as entries. Selecting collocation. Collocation means those words which come with each other. For example, like make mistake, make decide. We call such word as a collocation. Phrases and examples. Choosing lemma forms for each word or part of word to be lemmatized, defining word, organizing definitions, specifying pronunciation of words, labeling definitions and pronunciation for register and dialect where appropriate, selecting equivalents in bi- and multilingual dictionaries, translating collocation phrases and examples in bi- or multilingual dictionaries, designing the best way in which users can access the data in printed and electronic dictionaries. One important goal of lexicography is to keep the lexicographic information costs incurred by dictionary users as low as possible. Nielsen 2008 suggests relevant aspects for lexicographers to consider when making dictionaries, as they all affect the user's impression and actual use of specific dictionaries. Theoretical lexicography concerns the same aspects as lexicography, but aims to develop principles that can improve the quality of future dictionaries. For instance, in terms of access to data and lexicographic information costs. Several perspectives or branches of such academic dictionaries research have been distinguished. Dictionary criticism, or evaluating the quality of one or more dictionaries, like by means of reviews. Dictionary history, or tracing the tradition of a type of dictionary or of lexicography in a particular country or language. Dictionary typology, or classifying the various genres of reference works, such as dictionary versus encyclopedia, monolingual versus bilingual dictionary, general versus technical or pedagogical dictionary. Dictionary structure, or formatting the various ways in which the information is presented in a dictionary. Dictionary use, or observing the referenced acts and skills of dictionary users. And dictionary IT, or applying computer aids to the process of dictionary compilation. One important consideration is the status of bilingual lexicography, or the compilation and use of bilingual dictionary in all its aspects. In spite of a relatively long history of this type of dictionary, it is often said to be less developed in a number of respects than its unlingual counterparts, especially in cases where one of the language involved is not a major language. Not all genres of reference work are available in interlingual versions, like LSP, learners, and encyclopedic types. Also, sometimes these challenges produce new subtypes, semi-bilingual or bilingual laced dictionaries, such as Hornby's Advanced Learners Dictionary English-Chinese, which have been developed by translating existing monolingual dictionaries. Okay, at first I try to give you more information about lexicography. I know that some of this part were shared between the previous session, but I tried to give you more information and clarify the meaning of lexicography and its type. And now I want to review this article with you, which is about lexicography in internet era, which it is related to our lesson. Introduction: Lexicography in the Internet Era. Introduction to the Routledge Handbook of Lexicography. Introduction to Lexicography in the Internet Era. I want to zoom it to be clear for us. This handbook is a reference work covering key topics in lexicography. Each chapter provides an accessible introductory overview of an era of the field of lexicography. The book is intended for a diverse audience, but is firmly oriented towards newcomers. You, the reader, might be a researcher, a graduate student, an academic wanting to become familiar with the state of the art in the field of lexicography, or indeed a professional lexicographer looking for a way into one or more of the several topics covered. Okay, we want to review in brief this handbook, and we want to be familiar with lexicography in details, and we want to know more about lexicography. Lexicography, as I give you some definition in the previous session, here we will read lexicography according to the other aspects of lexicography. Lexicography is the science concerned with the theory and practice of dictionaries. That is, dictionaries, encyclopedias, lexica, glossaries, vocabularies, terminological knowledge bases, and other information tools covering areas of knowledge and its corresponding language. In other words, reference and information tools dealing with things, facts, and language. The 47 contributions in this volume together constitute a guide to what are, in the editor's view, the most significant counters in the lexicographical world, as well as offering a series of possible developments that might be influencing the near future of the field, which is clearly being subjected to both new developments and disruptive technologies. The coming of age of the Internet is the driving force of the Cambrian explosion lexicography is experiencing, and which is felt in the design and construction of the dictionaries, as well as in its new possible commercial application and business models. Okay, in each article we may read different definition of lexicography, but in basis they are shared with each other, but some people define it in their viewpoint, and all of these definitions are true. The scope of this volume, this handbook. Each chapter in this volume focuses on the specific area of lexicography. The chapters share broadly the same format, covering history of the area, critical discussion of its main current issues, and the indication of its emergent debates and theoretical and practical possibilities. Chapter concluding with a list of related topics in a volume. Each chapter has a section of further reading. Okay, these two paragraphs are not important because it gives you some information about this handbook, which is not connecting to our goal. Therefore, you shouldn't need to summarize this two paragraphs, which is about the scope of this volume. It is not related to us. And here you should just summarize this paragraph in this way, that you should just give the brief definition of lexicography according to this line, and you should say some information about the internet and lexicography which exists in this paragraph. Therefore, you here until here you should summarize this paragraph. This is not important to just this paragraph. You should summarize its important point. And this paragraph is about the structure of the handbook, and it is not important. And we keep our lesson from this subtitle, which is about the foundation of lexicography. Here it is important. Foundation of lexicography. This section contains chapters exploring the nature of lexicography as previously defined. It makes my case for editing a handbook which clearly differentiate and stand out in academic field of lexicography. Also, lexicography is frequently associated with applied linguistics. It is important. Which lexicography, although lexicography is frequently associated with applied linguistics, for example, this handbook is included in the prestigious Routledge Handbook in Linguistic Theory. The chapters in this part defend the proposition that lexicography is an independent science in its own right. Okay, here I consider lexicography as independent science with its own independent core and a big interdisciplinary vocation. The 5 chapters in this part reflect on the independent core of lexicography. Dictionary making is an art and craft which can be transformed in a scientific activity by approaching it under the tenets of a lexicographical theory, the so-called function theory of lexicography. Okay, here it's important that you should say that some persons believe that lexicography is related to and is sub-branch of applied linguistics. By here in this book, it considers lexicography as independent science, which it has its independent structure and which it has its independent core, which is dictionary making, is one of its art and craft which can be transformed in a scientific activity by approaching it under the tenet of a lexicographical theory, which we call it as a function theory of lexicography. Tarp's lexicography as an independent science, okay, refers to the controversy on the disciplinary status of lexicography and makes his case for defending the scientific status of lexicography. Follow bare and close concept of science. Lexicography is an independent science. Okay, it is important here. In this paragraph, this line is important. Lexicography is an independent science because you should know the reason which is considered about the independence of lexicography. Here in this book, consider lexicography as independent science, and here you can see its reason. Therefore, you should know the reason which, based on them, we decide that lexicography is an independent science. 1. Constitutes a system of knowledge growing out of social practice. It is one reason. Is developing on an ongoing basis. Is rooted in the form of concepts, categories, defined goals, theories, and hypotheses. Comprises both the history of dictionaries and its own history. Contains independent contributions to methodology. Includes dictionaries for practical action. Moreover, lexicography has its own research agenda which should focus on dictionary management, access meaning construction, and criticism together with an array of topics and do not need to be dealt with separately, like history, user needs, and situation, empirical basis for the lexicographical data, treatment of lexicographical data, and so on. Okay, here we can see the reason which we consider lexicography as an independent science. This issue can be treated in specific circumstances, usually in connection with specific dictionaries or dictionaries types, with the aim of extracting general terms from the particular lexicographic activities. Hence, most chapters situate concepts and issues in historical perspective and make provision for specific user needs, situation, empirical basis, treatment of lexicographical data, and so on. Until now, you should summarize this paragraph in just 2 or 3 paragraphs. In one of them, you should just define the lexicography and you should refer to their types. And here, the important point until now in this book is that lexicography is an independent science, and here you can see its reason. The importance of lexicography as an independent science is observed in Bregno's dictionary management. He argues that there must be a lexicographer as editor-in-chief of the whole process, which cannot be in the hands of someone without expert knowledge in lexicography. He even claims that the editor-in-chief is responsible for seeing that everyone taking part in the project understand the underlying lexicographic principle. Gauss' Dictionaries and Access also refer to the same view, which he explains by illustrating the possibilities of the access structure. He explains the working of some access structures, such as rapid access structure and access alphabet, within the general concept of the access process, and conclude his chapter by emphasizing that a lexicographer's main responsibility is to assure potential user easy and quick access to the lexicographical data, especially to the most important data in any dictionary type, meaning items, which are much more than traditional definition as explained in Agerbo's explaining meaning in the lexicographical information tools. Agerbo's hypotheses and proposals illuminate possible outcomes in the outline environment. They also explain why dictionary reviews must be more than a count of language matters. Okay, this paragraph is not important. It just gives you more information, and sometimes they are redundant for us. The interdisciplinary nature of lexicography. Also independent, lexicography clearly shows an interdisciplinary vocation, that is, cooperation between disciplines. Nielsen's initial chapter, Lexicography and Interdisciplinarity, presents the basis of this cooperation by analyzing the key role interdisciplinarity plays in today's lexicography, especially as lexicography is complex by nature due to its multifaceted challenge of providing help to users in a wide range of extra lexicographic situations, and must respond to challenges that are not restricted to one specific discipline. Hence, he clearly states that dictionaries are more than inventories of the words of language. They are information tools, and as such, different disciplines are of some help for lexicography. In particular, disciplines such as linguistics, applied linguistics and corpus linguistics, information science, terminology, cultural studies, discourse analysis, and natural language processing may be of help for compiling dictionaries. The relationship between these disciplines and lexicography is explored in this part, which defends the necessity of having lexicographic interdisciplinary network, that is, several specialists working together for compiling dictionary in today's world. Okay, here the important point is that lexicography is interdisciplinary, and you can see the part which and the field which is shared in the lexicography science. And it is important, and I should summarize this paragraph too. Here in this chapter of this book describes cooperation between linguistics and lexicography. This person discussed the influence of applied linguistics, basically pedagogically oriented theories, whereas FOPS centers on the corpus linguistic. These two chapters are complementary. Peters and Fernandez focused their discussion on English and Spanish dictionaries, which here you can see their names, and demonstrate that making pedagogical dictionaries like this for second language learners demands the active cooperation and participation of linguists who are responsible for translating linguistic theories and analyzes into lexicographic data. FOPS, however, adopted a broader view, which consists in summarizing the basic requirement of corpora and describing some corpus tools which can be used for compiling dictionaries. In other words, Peter and Fernandez illustrate how applied linguistics has influenced the making of two exemplary dictionaries, whereas Fobbs show how several corpus ideas, tools, and methods are being used or can be used for lexicographic purposes. Both chapters are connected with several other chapters in handbook. Okay, here you can see the subject of other chapters. And this is not important too. Okay, here in this chapter, which is about the lexicography and terminology, is basically neutral. She claims that both disciplines are intimately related and the cooperation among them is increasing between lexicography and terminology, especially as a consequence of technological innovation. She especially mentions crowdsourcing and similar practical work, blending the object of study and adopting corpus-based methods. The chapter is adamant that the relationship between them will continue to blossom in the near future, perhaps up to a point in which distinction between them will disappear as more and more users demand quality information tools, no matter if they center on word, terms, or both. Dictionaries and language policies, another in the chapter 10, is less neutral. Nkomo's main thesis is that dictionaries and language policies influence each other. This cooperation may have both positive and negative outcomes. For instance, he thinks that at a macro level, this cooperation may have a negative influences. Certain languages may be marginalized. However, it also shows that lexicography may play a crucial role in the redressing of linguistic inequalities by contributing towards the development of previously marginalized languages. Cooperation at a micro level is subtler, as it is basically concerned with the advantages and disadvantages of prescription and description. He favors prescription, that is recommendation, as a good way of eliminating the disadvantages of prescription and description while conserving their advantages. Dictionaries and Culture is another interdisciplinary matter which is related to lexicography. Centers on illustrating how some key lexicographic components, especially definitions, can be ideological weapons. That is, they can show a reality according to a particular political, religious, and racial, gendered, and so on worldview. Hence, lexicographic data such as definition typically do not reflect an objective reality, but what users mean by the word they use, and consequently words are only subjective symbols of human experience, social label. This idea is really disturbing and calls into question the assumed idea that lexicographers can really make definition based on concordances and similar matching-led methods. Another chapter which is about the lexicography and natural language processing, which this person analyzed cooperation that came to the fore very recently. These chapters could have been included in part 6 of this volume. They also present methods, tools, technologies, resources, and so on that illustrate possible future outcomes in lexicography. By including them in this part, I want to emphasize that they are auxiliary and therefore cannot or should not modify the nature of lexicography, as the same is defined at the very beginning of this introduction. In other words, both natural language processing, which is NLP, And information science can play a significant role in lexicography if they are used as auxiliary element in lexicographic project. Conversely, they can ruin the project if they are the dominant part of it, especially when participants in the project seem to be more interested in presenting an illusion that is lexicographic project without the proper cost benefit analysis than making real dictionaries. These three chapters are complementary, which focus on the connection between NLP and lexicography. Bausma review possible uses of information science for lexicographic purposes, and Roussey et al. Illustrate how information science and NLP can join force and develop domain ontologies, some of which may be of much use for lexicographer. And this person, Horrocks and Rambusk chapter introduces a link between NLP and lexicography in both directions. First, they illustrate how lexicographic work benefit from technique of natural language processing, especially from word sense disambiguation, semantic similarity measures, name entity recognition, relation extraction, and corpus-based lexicographical activities, for example, for selecting good example. Second, they refer to the exploitation of lexicographic data for improving language engineering technology, especially those used for creating lexical databases like OWID, developing ontologies and semantic networks like WordNet, making use of link open data. They also see the future of lexicography in connection with user interface adaptation, that is increased individualization, and crowdsourcing, that is user-generated dictionaries, especially user manually annotating large data sets with syntactic and semantic information. And Boma's chapter argues lexicography and information science have much to learn from each other, especially in terms of designing more innovative online dictionaries. He basically analyzed a host of disruptive technologies as they are currently used in information technology that can also be of much use in lexicography. In particular, he discusses topics such as user information needs and behavior, and access to data and information from the point of view of a state-of-the-art information technology accepted principles and practices, with the aim of discussing their possible validity for the theory and practice of lexicography. For instance, technologies such as searching and navigating, filtering and profiling, adaptive hypertext and hypermedia data markup can be used to improve access to lexicographic data and favor individualization, perhaps lexicographers' holy grail at the time of writing this introduction. Okay. Therefore, when I want to summarize this part, for this subtitle you should summarize it in this way. Here, you write that the interdisciplinary nature of lexicography. Okay, you write in your summarization, you write this subtitle, the interdisciplinary nature of lexicography, and in front of this subtitle you put dots. After that you write that its interdisciplinary nature are here you can see about the between linguistic and lexicography, and after that you put commas, then you follow it by lexicography and terminology, and you put commas after the lexicography and terminology, then you write dictionaries and language policy, you put comma after that, dictionaries and culture, lexicography and natural language processing, lexicography and information science. You just mentioned the title. I mean that you can summarize this paragraph just in 3 lines, not more. You write the subtitle, put a dot in front of that, and you write those science with lexicography is connecting with them. It is enough, and there isn't any need to write more details about them. Types of dictionaries. Dictionary typologies exist in many sizes and shapes. You should refer to this point that dictionary typologies exist in many sizes and shapes. There are three main types of classification based on formal, structural, and functional criteria. It is important. These matters are important, and you should mention them in your summarization. Which dictionary typologies exist in many sizes and shapes. There are three main types of classification based on formal, structural, or functional criteria. The formal and structural classification usually coincide on differing phenomenological division, for example, based on range, perspective, and presentation of dictionary articles. Mel Cook, for instance, has proposed a classification of dictionaries which is based on type of nomenclature, general or specialist dictionaries, arrangement of entries, alphabetical or systematic dictionaries, type of information, synchronic or diachronic dictionaries. You should know this type of dictionary according to this point. Purpose of the dictionaries: research instrument or a teaching learning tools. In my view, these typologies are rather confusing and are losing relevance in the internet era. Hence, in the party of this handbook offers a simpler approach which rests on two main ideas. First, dictionaries are utility tools. TARPs, the concept of dictionary, indicates that they are conceived for consultation with the genuine purpose of the meeting punctual information needs experienced by a specific type of potential user in a specific type of extra lexicographical context. Some of these extra lexicographical contexts are reception, production, translation, teaching, learning, and LSB context. Second, the medium is influencing the practice of dictionary making in such a way that existing dictionary typologies must be discarded. For instance, Humbly convincingly argues that Wikipedia has quickly become what is probably the world's most used specialized dictionaries. Another method is dictionaries for text reception, dictionary for text production, dictionaries for translation. Exemplify three types of dictionary for meeting potential needs in these three extra lexicographic situations: reception, someone is reading; production, someone is writing; translation, someone is translating from language 1 into language 2 and from language 2 into language 1. So sorry. These three chapters complement each other and follow TARP's concept of dictionary. Another matter which is important is dictionaries to assist teaching and learning adopt a somewhat different approach. Okay, here we can see some type of dictionary, and you should mention the just name of these dictionaries, just name of these types, which is for example, dictionary to assisted teaching and learning, which is learners dictionaries, for example, or specialized learners dictionaries. You should just mention the title of this, the type of these dictionaries, specialized dictionaries. There isn't to know more detail about them. Other is that these dictionaries show degrees of specializations. Okay, it is not important really. Okay, in this subtitle, which is about the typology of dictionary, you should just name the type of dictionary, and I don't want the more detail about this dictionary. Other matter is innovative dictionaries. In here, innovation is typically viewed as the application of better solution to those traditionally considered and used at a particular period. Hence, innovation is associated with the new ideas, devices, or methods that add value to a product, process, or service. It typically implies something disruptive coming into a particular market and destroying the existing status. The chapter in this part basically follow this view. All of them focus on the lexicographical aspect that can be considered innovative, and the same time explain that innovation and tradition can be two sides of the same coin. In other words, this chapter shows first that these dictionaries stand out, and second, the innovation and tradition are compatible and mutually enforcing. There are no chapters devoted to brand new project, basically because this project typically refer to the unfinished lexicographic project. Okay, here you can see the lexicographic innovation concern data description, data access, and data presentation. Miller's Learner's Dictionaries of English offer an analysis of English learners' dictionaries, so-called Big Six, from the point of view of someone who is an English native speaker but live and work down under. From this point of view, her analysis is very interesting, especially her conclusion on some of the advantages and disadvantages of these Big Six dictionaries. Her analysis showed that these dictionaries stand out because they have introduced some far-reaching ideas into lexicography, the use of simplified vocabularies and corpus data being two of them. No one doubts that the use of corpora as a lexicographical empirical basis has influenced the practice of lexicography in the last 30 years and is still the major influence in today's lexicographic world. She also offers some clues connecting these two recent trends in e-lexicography, the development of a new business model which is based on free access and promotional practices, user active participation, either as a commentators, amateurs, lexicographers. To sum up, the chapter show that this dictionary exerts a lot of influence in lexicography and therefore merits its inclusion in a part devoted to presenting innovative dictionaries. Revising the dictionary of Canadianisms on historical principle excel in four main aspects which taken together make this contribution an excellent example of real lexicographic innovation concerning not only data description, data access, and data presentation, but also considering view that what matters is what has been achieved in the real world is the real money. First, this chapter illustrates how scholarly dictionaries can be updated and adapted to users' changing life conditions and necessities. Second, it shows how editors can make use of previous work. We don't need to reinvent the lexicographical wheel at all time. Third, it explains how a historical dictionary can be completed with poor funding in a brief span of time. And finally, it also claims that the internet can offer a lot of good lexicographic solutions provided certain safe practices are adopted. Similar principles are explained by Mackey and Mackey's The Online Dictionary of New Zealand Sign Language. Here we can see some innovative type of dictionary, and you should just mention this new type of the innovative type of dictionary. Okay, these dictionary are in innovative form and you should mention them. The more details is not necessary for you. You should just refer to those innovative type of dictionary. About the lexicography around the world, an overview. Here just review the all type of lexicography which I think it is not necessary to know. This part is important. Okay, I think this is enough until the I think it is enough in this session until the lexicography around the word and overview. I will continue this matters, this subject in the future, in the next session. Please read them and ask your question through the WhatsApp group and do your task in the special in the time which I determine for you. Thank you.